Welcome back to the LJL ahead of AXIZ versus Burning Core. Both teams that are on a bit of a downswing at the moment, Middlecop.
Yeah, definitely to a certain extent. AXIZ have sort of been one of our periphery teams, have been on the edge of playoffs basically the entire split. Burning Core had a great start to the split, but have had some shaky moments in sort of around about the last round robin, I think, work of games. So definitely an interesting matchup to be sure.
Oh, you
Looking
wanted me to
forward to
jump
that.
in there? I was like,
I-
I was like, he's covered it pretty well at that one.
Yeah,
Seems
Yeah,
like
it's just
seems like a good matchup.
Yeah, we'll just go
Give
straight
you-
to the
give
game.
you a
Yeah,
little bit.
cast to scout the game. Yeah.
yeah, just get straight into it. So,
But yeah, no, go.
important
Seriously.
stat. Important stat that we talked at length during the break. Burning Core haven't won a game when they were behind at 15 minutes. 7 games without a win in that circumstance.
And the thing is, AXIZ, where they do shine, tends to be first 15 minutes. It tends to be the 15 to 20 minute mark where the wheels completely... They don't even just fall off. They just like absolutely like explode off of the vehicle. They just like fly off another... They just literally just like... See, no, the glitch in the Matrix is like, we should probably retcon this team existing, and then post 15 minutes, they don't. But when you have a player like Tol2 who came in for Yelioshi midway through the split after the Smite Top meta was completely crunched out of the meta, this guy plays so many early laning champions like the Akshan, like the Draven top, amongst other things, to try and brute force those advantages. If there really is an underlying issue for Burning Core in terms of how they play out with deficits, even just the smallest of ones, AXIZ might be a bad matchup for them, and that's a dangerous prospect for Burning Core because this is not a team you want to be losing to, especially when we get closer to those players. We highlighted it so much in that last game. A lot of these games are on the home stretch, and they are momentum building for these teams.
And for Burning Core, a win here would lock them in for playoffs. Unlikely that they'll beat Sengoku in the overall standings unless some kind of grand ploy of fate occurs. But just just assuring that playoffs is there means that Burning Core can be, weight off their minds.
Yeah, it's sort of sod's law that the one way that you'll end up dropping out of playoffs is the way that events will end up transpiring. So just making it mathematically impossible that you miss out on the postseason, I think it's going to feel good for Burning Core. And I think the way that they're going to want to do it this game is probably through forcing a lot through mid lane, because I think that Dice has probably been their most stable player, probably been their strongest performing player as well. And again, I think this is one of those matchups where AXIZ are sort of in a little bit of a deficit.
And looking at the champion pool which Dice has, he hasn't been playing for early facilitators. Again, we kind of mentioned the rise in the last game not really being a thing for certain players in their champion pools, but you look at Dice, he's been playing the Akali, been playing Tryndamere mid. That Victor, of course, was so impressive in their last victory versus AXIZ when Dice just absolutely smashed that matchup. But he's going to need a bit of facilitating himself, and then the rest of the map needs to balance around then, allowing Dice to come online in a relevant time span.
And you know who is no stranger to Rise Nymera? It's Megaman. 5 games on that champion. I'm not sure of the actual win rate on that, but
he's sure been playing it.
But yeah,
it's
been locked in. It's been locked in. And I mean, it sort of speaks to a bit more of AXIZ's playstyle, right? I think that if you're looking at carries on this team, we've already talked about Tol2. I think we need to mention Saintru as well as one of those players. So having mid lane picks like the Rise, like the Vex, like the RE champions that are a bit more inclined to move to these side lanes and get involved in skirmishes with these side lanes that you want to be snowballing makes a lot of sense for Megaman. I'm just worried for that 1v1 matchup because I feel like if Dice goes for a pick that isn't even necessarily early game oriented, just something vaguely aggressive, he can punish very, very hard.
Absolutely. And speaking of Saintru, I do want to bring up Yuhi because while a certain analyst/host on this broadcast refuses to say anything good about Yuhi, he's actually been doing pretty damn well this split. I don't know if this is a case of a rising tide lifts all ships, but considering a certain game last year, Nymera, that still causes you nightmares, I imagine.
Look, at the end of the day,
it's a very different Yuhi.
There is so much footage of Yuhi just being a real liability for his team. There was a lot of groundwork to be covered for me to have any kind of confidence in him. Now, I think him being able to sit on Nephelios Jinx meta, with Nephelios being by far his best champion, has helped him in that regard. His Jinx has also been fairly consistent too. That doesn't mean he hasn't had bad games. In fact, some of their recent losses, I would say, have been because Yuhi has been exposed when he's been put behind, when the team's been put behind and they're not able to facilitate this player. So if he is to, again, reclaim some of his reputation and the legacy he wants to leave behind in this league, this last half of the split, stretch of the split, rather, because way past the one. Last few games. The team is going to have to help enable him and make sure he ends on a high note, which he's been struggling to find in the last few.
And I think that Fujimoto has kind of been doing that for him throughout this split. He's been playing so much Tahm Kench, which is one of these supports that can enable and provide a lot of safety to these hyper carries, which I think does mitigate some of Yuhi's weaknesses just as a player. But I agree with you, Nymera. I think that he needs to shore up some of the unforced errors through these last 4 games if Burning Core are going to make a deep run in playoffs.
And shouting out Fujimoto, I want to point out both supports actually that kind of Wakanda 2018. We do not do enchanters here. It's all tanks. It's all engage. It's all. We don't do that here. Actually, that's kind of a running theme through a lot of our LJL supports. That there's only a few, like half.
You could say that with a lot of things about the LJL. Fight at 5 to 10 minutes. We don't do that here. Pick enchanters. No, that's not our thing either. Like AD Kaiser. What's AP Kaiser? We like our crit. Yeah, sure.
And I think that's really weird in a region which is known for how strong its AD carries are. So you think that maybe picks that enable them and facilitate their damage, stuff like the Lulu, stuff like the Yuumi, would maybe be higher priority, but apparently not. Just engage, and then we don't fight. Oh, I love the LJL.
Despite all of this, we do genuinely really appreciate the LJL, love it as a region. But sometimes we just say it's like, oi, do something, do the thing. We'd really appreciate it if you did the thing, because you know you're going to go international, get absolutely slammed because you're not doing the thing.
Do the thing, LJL. Are we just at a zoo, like tapping the glass, trying to get the animal to do something?
Do the raw. Do the raw. Well, that's our expert analysis for this game. Don't know how we build on that one.
Yeah, I feel like
I have one final point, actually. And that's Toltu, we brought him up, likes playing his carries in top lane. We know who else is a super dominant top laner if he gets any form of advantage?
Is that Rayfaki?
I feel like it.
And
it maybe Rayfaki.
For a player that was put on Gragas duty so much of last season, it's great to see him be drafting towards stuff like Darius again, his main champion, getting some jacks out. And as much as I say, oh no, he was on Gragas duty last season, I mean, he was on that last game, and that is something which I don't really want to see again. I think that Rayfaki is the caliber of player that can be played around as much as we talked about Dice in the 1v1 in the mid lane is going to be very important in this specific matchup. I always want to see Rayfaki with agency because this player has, for as long as I've watched him, been again up there as second best, third best top laner in the region, really pushing the top of the top lane pool just that extra bit further.
And other teams respect it. Darius is the 3rd most banned champion against Burning Core overall.
It's really nice losing the game at level 1 and 2 because you've just given a random solo kill to that champion. Crazy how that happens.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
And the Tryndamere as well is something that, particularly Dice, is not allowed to play.
I think we've got a few
76% of the time he is not allowed to play.
I think we've got a couple of other champions in that. I kind of want to throw Sangchu's Zeri in that pool. I know that the champion isn't as strong, but I'm pretty sure we've only seen it once or twice from them, and that was enough for it to become the most banned champion against AXIZ. So,
the Zeri was one of their very few wins as well. I mean, the Zeri game which Sangchu did play was against V3, where we had that absolutely absurd triple kill where Zeri just keeps running forward and forward.
That was beautiful.
And yeah, I mean, maybe we could see one of those champions falling through. A lot of name-plated champions you have to respect here in this matchup.
Absolutely, and that is perfect timing because the draft is now live. I'm going to, I don't feel so good, Mr. Stark, and disappear for the time being, but I will leave you guys to continue with
Wow.
that.
Everywhere I go, I hear his voice just randomly in the background of the Discord call.
What's that a reference to?
Another pop culture thing. I believe that. See,
We're into draft here.
the last time, hang on, no, the last time we were casting, you didn't get so many of my references. I made a vow to not get any of your references after that point, and I'm sad to say that I've got a couple today, and I'm sad, Middlecott.
Yeah,
I wanted to return the favor.
That's quite unfortunate what you've done there. Well, you've played yourself. It's an L. But yeah, we are here. Champions Select is occurring. AXIZ kind of splitting their bans everywhere. Burning Core taking away that Zeri away from Sanctuary, as well as the Akshan out of Toltu's hands.
Okay, so we have Jinx Felios left on the table, but Hecarim is also just existing. So, question is, do you want to pick this to the side of AXIZ and just say, yo, we're gonna, passively gain our leads. We're not looking for the level 1 to 3 first clear, second clear kind of mark. And now the question is, Burning Core, you've got plenty of answers on the table to something like a Hecarim. You can pick stuff like Viego. You can pick stuff which is better at dealing with the counter-engage, or rather disengage style of play. And Xayah is one of those picks. So you can pick this in the poke style of play. You dive into the Hecarim, and the Xayah doesn't deal too badly with that.
Yeah, you just throw the feathers up, and the engage is kind of thwarted. Then, obviously, once you pull those back, that's a lot of damage that you can drop as well. And I like it for you. He just stylistically as a pick offers him a little bit more safety without having to sacrifice the damage quite as much. And something that I didn't be expecting to see today was our second Samira, and then a Rel locked in for Dicey as well.
And that is level 2 all in. Yeah. Absolutely stun on them. You can cancel the crash down with the Nautilus. There are plenty of ways the support matchup can be put around. And while all the fighting is going to be happening in bot lane, we sadly are probably going to have Rayfarki on Gragas duty again, and that makes me very sad.
I will just say, the last time he played it, he did go for a little bit of an more AP slanted build. I think he went the Everfrost as the Mythic. So there's a little bit of damage there, a little bit of funkiness, but yeah, it's not a Darius, man. It's not a Jace. It's not a Jace.
All of this stuff. All of that stuff, right? And it just makes me feel just a little bit sad, because we saw Rayfarki on the Gragas so much last season, and even though he did go for the higher AP builds, it just wasn't really what his team... He couldn't do enough on that pick for his team that was struggling so much at that time. Of course, Burning Core of last season were in very dire straits, and this time they're in a much better... I mean, actually, you know what? I feel like Burning Core have more wins in this split than they had of the entire season last year.
They do, yeah.
That wasn't a very high bar to stay to get above.
It was 4 wins in total last year. Yeah. So, well, they're set for the next couple at this point.
That's it. Phone it in. Don't have to turn up on stage next split.
Yeah, it's just fine. You don't have to worry about it. Top lane bans being focused here by Burning Core with the Nart and the Kennen removed. Toltu has favoured a bit more of those sort of ranged bullies, and well, the Wind Brothers taken off the table by AXIZ here, fearing dice on the Yone and the Yasuo.
Or maybe it's just saying, look, you already have AP on your top and support. You can lock in a Diana if you want, but we're not going to give you a good combo for it. Maybe that was the angle. Trying to remove some AD mid options away from dice, so they maybe feel like they might want to pick an AP jungle, but they can't. Actually, with that in mind, okay, so potential Flawless Graves. He's played it 3 times. Also is the outside chances putting on the table of the Gragas jungle Graves top. Unlikely to happen, but worth just putting that down.
And I feel like
they do have themselves an AD threat.
And I feel like I favour Flawless a bit more on this Graves, because he seems stronger on the more carry-oriented picks rather than stuff that provides that engage. Obviously, when you've got that Gragas, when you've got the Nautilus, you can dip into that damage a little bit more. And I don't think either of us is particularly surprised to see Megamin locking in the Vex, one of these mages that offers a hell of a lot of setup.
I actually feel like, as much as it's risky in itself, you need some zone control here from Burning Core. I think you maybe just need to lock in something like a Vigar. But doing that into the Hecarim, doing that into the Rel, it's a dangerous thing to do. Is that a Sejuani top?
It's a Sejuani top.
Do we have a Sejuani top from Toltu?
We have a Sejuani top.
We have a Sejuani top. That is incredible. I love it. You have an AD, you have a melee jungler in the Hecarim. That is really fun. There's really cool combos you can pull up for this.
Okay. Someone called J-Real, because he was playing this in Clash last night, and he was popping off on it. Okay. He's grabbing solo kills left, right, and center. Going Ignite TP, which I think is maybe a little bit aggressive, but, I mean, Toltu's been aggressive with his summoner spell choices before.
But what this means is that you don't have Toltu on like a hyper carry. Yeah, you did play the Scion that one time. You don't have the, which was a bit more facilitator, but this is a very different look for AXIZ. But oh my word, you sit there as Yuhi, as the Zion, like, wow, I picked a safe, disengaging pick, and there is not enough ultimates in the world which can save you from this.
I love it. Like, that's always the risk when you go for a safe pick is, what if the enemy just doubles down?
Yeah.
What if it's not 1 or 2 ultimates that I need to dodge? It's 4 or 5. At that point, I feel like you need some Earth level tech or one of those weird items that they introduce in the special game mode so that you can ult 3 times in a fight or something. I feel like that's the only way that you survive.
Bring back Spear of Shojin.
No, don't.
Please never do that. Don't do that.
Please don't.
That would be a huge mistake. Do not bring back Spear of Shojin. Back to the game. So, yeah, we have a very large range advantage in some ways, though, from slower played out fights from Burning Core. You've got Graves to be able to, of course, very much outrage a Hecarim who doesn't have any of that to their own name. Gragas who can disengage, keep that bulwark up. And then you have the Poke Zaya, we have to assume. I'd imagine this isn't going to be the crit. So, if AXIZ don't hit the engage well, there is a worry that Burning Core can just poke them out and use their range advantage well. They have so many things to throw at you. The kitchen sink has been torn out with the rest of it to be thrown at you. At this point, they're digging into the foundation, just throwing the brickwork around too. And I feel like Burning Core, if they do fall behind, which has been obviously a death knell for them in all of the games which it has happened in, this is going to go from bad to worse very quickly.
Well, I'll have to see if AXIZ are able to pick up the win this game and keep their slim playoff hopes alive. We're on to the rift now for AXIZ versus Burning Core. Burning Core just starting fairly defensively with their positioning, and AXIZ not overstepping either. Neither team wanting to make a mistake in this early game.
No, so we will, of course, be tracking what both these compositions will be looking to do in this game. We kind of said, okay, if AXIZ get ahead, they are so good at snowballing the game with this kind of composition. And if Vex gets ahead, the person you land on, because you've got like 5 other ultimates, or like 4 other ultimates flying at them, they're going to die. You're going to get resets fairly easily. Yeah. But if you fall behind, you try and do the same thing, all you're doing is funneling into feathers. So we will track that and see how easy it is for AXIZ to pull off the combo and how Burning Core are dealing with this very cards on the table, we're coming at you comp.
As both bot lanes might be coming at each other. What is this? Come on, sort it out. Someone do something, right? One secured by Dicey. I'm not too sure what's going on. Actually going for the crash down here, but does get hooked up by Fujimoto. The Ignite drop very, very early as well. The Rel can't move particularly quickly in these early levels as Sanctu forced to dash himself away. Where are we waiting on that hook? Coming up soon. Fujimoto holding it for now, but we'll be able to get that lockdown onto Sanctu, and it's a lot of damage traded back, actually. Yuhi taking a tower shot, but priority in the bot lane already secured for Burning Core.
I mean, that was an absolute sitter for Fujimoto. You're sat there thinking, well, I can just cancel the crash down at level 1, and they do that. You don't get the Glacial after that point. Megaman now being focused on in the mid lane.
Trading some damage back, forced to flash away. Does get the fear onto Flawless, who's going to follow with the flash of his own. One more auto with the red buff burn. And it's first blood to Burning Core.
Bot lane does it all themselves. Mid lane takes Flawless coming in, but Megaman, for a player that has so often played the Rise and the Vex, to push in early, give some priority, over pushes this time. And in his very inaugural split, in his debut into the LJL, he was doing quite similar things on quite a lot of mages. He would struggle to survive early game, even back in the Seraphine meta when she was so hard to unroot from mid. And it seemed like he'd evolved past that, but just a little bit of those old flaws shining through sadly in this game.
And speaking of old flaws, Flawless, pretty nice.
Wait, is he that old?
Well,
he's been playing for a while, but
he's definitely a player that's been around, played in a couple of leagues, LTK, LJL, probably never heard from them. But the thing is, described back then by a lot of commentators as great hands, not really got that gameplay brain. Going for that 2 camp into that mid lane gank to secure the first blood, that feels like a play that's been made with his brain. So good start for Flawless, picking up that Scuttle Crab as well. And this Graves is going to scale very, very well against the Hecarim as they both farm up. So getting that first blood puts you in an even better spot.
Yeah, and that's the thing about this particular matchup, right? Is that Graves is not great in the jungle right now, but he's more than fine if you're against another champion that doesn't really want to do much. You just get to that point where you go through your first clear, you level up a couple of times, and suddenly you're clear. Camps don't exist. You know, you're very much on a similar vein to the Karthus, which he's also played, where all of these farming junglers just get to hoover up farm, get lots of resources, and in a region like the LJL where we don't fight early, you get a lot of passive benefit from that without having to put your team at risk.
So I'm seeing something a little bit weird here, Nymera. Yeah?
Yeah.
I'd appreciate it if you do me a little explainer-unio, okay?
Is this an item on Graves, perchance?
It is an item on Graves. Iron Spike Whip. Are we seeing a Gore Drinker here?
We can also be the Strikebreaker.
Okay.
The Gold Ray, I think that against Heavy Dive, I think there's value in both. I'm just trying to theory craft this myself. I feel like if you tag a slow onto Vex or onto Samira, they die fairly quickly, actually. I have seen a bit of it myself. But what it also does, of course, getting the early Iron Spike Whip helps you clear out. It gets you a bit more HP to work around too. Ever since Crit Graves got a little bit... very much slaughtered.
We're finding a polite word.
I just like, no, where we got absolutely just shafted. It was really difficult.
You have
that's a
no
lot of
mana.
damage.
The Ignite's been dropped down, heals up with that cast, but Toltu just needs a couple more auto attacks. Flash still available for the Gragas, but won't be forced to use it as the Body Slam is invested. And despite that all-in not going well for Rayfaki, still doing pretty well on CS.
Doing more than fine, and Toltu now wastes that combat summoner. There's a teleport to get back to lane from Rayfaki, so gets out with fairly preferential trade from what looked like quite severe kill threat at the start of it.
It's a rough moment indeed. 5.5 minutes on the clock, meaning that Dragon is currently live, and Dicey, the way that he's stancing in mid lane, has a lot of priority, so Flawless will be a little bit more able to start this one up than Swamp so far. Neither junglers hit 6 quite yet. Flawless still only level 4, so we'll need to do a little bit more farming until he's truly activated on this Grave. Swamp, though, could be looking for a bot lane gank.
Could be, has Ghost, but there's 4 summoners available from Burning Core. This is difficult to land, and as much as he's hanging around the corner, Graves is here too. If this turns into a 3v3, very Burning Core favored currently.
Yeah, itemization currently favoring Yuhi. Sanctuary forced her back early, so currently just sat on that Doran's Blade. It is the boots and the longsword for Yuhi. Both junglers making passing visits towards the bot side, but with the Burning Core bot lane just going to shove this wave out, they're going to rotate away, and I think that Drake is going to be that next focus.
And speaking of the boost and the longsword on Yuhi, that's not going to be going towards a lethality side. It is going to be the lethal tempo, so that is going to be crit. Crit Zaya was buffed on recent patches. For every point of crit, you do get more damage onto your E, of course. I mean, that was always the case, but basically Crit Zaya was buffed a little. I'm trying to remember the exact buff on it. Either way, crit now slightly better. It's more good, but it still can suffer in the early game. However, Burning Core, just by pressing the buttons pretty well and outplaying the laning phase, have found themselves quite an organic lead regardless of the champion builds they're going towards.
Yeah, I mean, that level 1, basically, you're kind of free to lane. After that, Sanctu still behind in CS by about 13, which was equivalent to the amount of minions that he lost off of that forced reset. So the lead hasn't been getting any bigger for Burning Core, but maintaining it at this level is pretty good, I feel like, for Yuhi and Fujimoto, who I think that you could argue are potentially the weaker bot lane as a duo.
I think you very much could argue that. But we will track how, of course, that works into team fights, because that's what we're building up to. You can see the storm on the horizon and say, oh, look, that's going to be a 5v5 where everyone's pressing ultimates, and there's going to be a lot of bright, flashy graphics for us to look at for a small amount of time in this game before everyone absolutely has their HP bars demolished. So we have Herald spawning 2, Burning Core, they have vision around it, they have Graves on the top side of the map, but no one's very quickly starting it at this point. So again, this is very typical LJL early game. We don't really like to fight that much here. We had like there's one gank from Burning Core. It's like, wow, that's our early game done. See you in 20 minutes. We get to podcast after that point, and you should totally watch the LJL podcast that we do every Tuesday. We talk about the LJL.
that was clean. That was smooth.
Almost like we don't have in-game advertisements, but we do have plugs, and we do have Sanctuary being forced off of tower. And actually, credit to Yuhi and Fujimoto. that level 1 has snowballed into absolute control of this bot lane. They've been able to do with the wave exactly what they wanted to do, been able to arm wrestle resources away from Sanctuary.
But AXIZ have been able to pick up this Herald in trade, so Burning Core don't get to double dip on the early game objectives. It's not the Herald and that first Drake, and generally the gold I feel like is a little bit more useful in the early stages. We'll have to see where AXIZ want to put that one down to get the most efficiency out of it. Megamin just throwing up dice in the mid lane, who secured a pretty sizable CS advantage over the AXIZ mid laner, as Flawless going for a bit of a cheeky invade here.
He is, and remember the Vex ultimate is available. This has been a typical point where things go very bad when you play against Vex, where you're like, oh, I can go and invade, and you realize the Vex ultimate kind of means that they can be stuck under that turret, and it just doesn't matter. They fly in and they punish you very heavily, but not going to be the case at that point. Flawless getting a camp steal away, has a lot of camps up himself, and Burning Core, again, just very... It seems to be the word of the first 2 games, and I guess the jungle meta in general, just passively getting quite a lot of advantage, not really having to put himself out there to get ahead of the curve.
And I mean, that has to favour Burning Core as it stands right now, because they've got that scaling Graves pick, and the lanes are across the board going fine for them. And it's AXIZ with a bit more of a single carry focus composition, I feel, with just this Samira, I feel, is like the pure AD damage. Megamin obviously going to be a bit more on setup and not really in a position to carry.
I mean, the thing is, there isn't a huge tank on the side of Burning Core, so all of your base damages for stuff like the Hecarim and stuff too, it's going to be fine. And if that allows you to get a reset, even if it is on something like Gragas who's caught out, even though he can itemize fairly effectively against the lower damage from AXIZ, if it does come through, those resets aren't going to be a very happy time for the rest of Burning Core.
Toltu actually not back towards Rayfarki's tower. Done a fair bit of damage to the Sejuani, but now that Flawless has joined the party, I think that damage number is going to increase a fair bit. No flash available for Toltu, and will just get taken out. That was pretty easy for Burning Core, honestly.
And a bit of a frustration ultimate maybe coming out from Toltu. Throws it and goes, I'm going to stun you and do some damage, and just sits there and goes like, wow, that did so little. Now I don't have an ultimate for the next fight of the game. Should we go and look for it? And the Sejuani top, as much as it is fun, and it has been doing okay in that laning phase, you can see how awkward it is to play out when you don't take that flash.
Swamp was just waiting for Dice to do a double distort in mid, and then could have looked for an engage, but will not find it. Instead, just traversing the river, plying their time around the bottom side of the map. Still has that Herald for around about a minute, as Flawless is potentially caught out here. The Onslaught of Shadows going forward, but there are more Burning Core members than maybe AXIZ expected, and now Megamin and the jungler are caught out. Megamin forced to flash away, as Swamp is going to get taken out, and Dice just jumps on his head and takes him to town. Sanctuary starts to reset through, but the feathers get pulled back and slice him apart. That's a huge fight for Burning Core.
And it's not like there's a teleport available from Toltu, because it's still pre-14 minutes. Can't teleport onto that ward. AXIZ, they go for a deep invade. They try and take something, or rather, they try and punish Flawless as he comes out of his own jungler, but they find themselves in a 4v5, and they find themselves on the bad end of a horrible early game trade. And we talked about this composition being one that does come online early, that wants to fight around early dives and all of this stuff, and it has just not happened for them. This is, of course, how it came about, and Flawless walks up as the ultimate immediately coming in, but a quick Nautilus ult to disengage, and Gragas being on the front line too, walking down to that play, called out nice and early. AXIZ completely overestimate themselves and get taken apart.
Honestly, kind of felt like Halo, because it was a reach from AXIZ, diving a bit too far into the enemy.
Sorry, what was that a reference to?
I've got no idea.
Oh, man.
That's the next level. That's the next level. Referencing pop culture in ways that neither of you understand. That's what we're aiming for.
I think it's like, for the record, I am a huge Halo fan. I know exactly what that is. Which is why it pains me so much. If you'd reference any other game but Reach, would have been like, God damn it, I have to reference that. But like, Reach was what I had a love-hate relationship with, because I loved it for the social aspect of it, but I just wished it was the original trilogy instead. Either way, we are now getting to the point where AXIZ were trying to put online, of course, their giant galaxy-killing weapon of all 5 ultimates hitting one target. And they have not gotten to a stable point in this game. They have started to fall apart. They're going to fall behind the curve of this game. And as much as I said, wow, they snowball so effectively, that works both ways. Burning Core, after taking that fight, are going to have themselves a lead at the 15-minute mark. They don't have to worry about fighting back from a deficit, which they have failed to do this split. And they're in a very comfortable position now after not really having to have done much.
Honestly, Flawless is looking like a weapon to surpass Metal Gear with this Gore Drinker. Chains landing in the mid lane onto Mega Man, but responds with an Everfrost of his own.
When did you learn pop culture? When did this happen, Middlecart?
So full disclosure, I haven't played any Metal Gear name. All I know is that that's a quote, and that people, when you say that, they go, "Oh, that's Metal Gear."
It's just say like, wow, you've left me in phantom pain. Anyway, AXIZ, they find themselves
feeling real pain as Dicey jumps on top of him, but like I was saying, there isn't really too much damage to come through yet. A Burning Core are just
no way is he out.
And oh no, into the backline dives Sanctuary. It's actually 2 dead for Burning Core already. Yuhi trying to kite out on that backside, pulls the back, but gets shot in the head. AXIZ, okay, you weren't meant to win this fight. Shadow Surge locking up Dice as well. Distortions himself away. And how the hell did AXIZ get 3 kills there?
But Burning Core did all the hard work. They'd done all the hard work. You'd get yourself a lead, and then for some reason, a lapse of judgment, you see Fujimoto and Flawless going in for an invade into the enemy jungle. And the last time we saw the red buff invade, we brought up that point saying, hey, it's kind of dangerous to do that, this composition. Vex can fly in from wherever. This time, it's post 14 minutes. You can teleport in too. That's insult to injury. And as much as the blast cone it's a very fun interaction. Sanctu has the flash to commit on his own way. He goes for a quick 1v2 against both bot laners, charges up that style rank. And the bad thing about Crit Zyra is that you don't come online as early as a Lethality Zyra. You don't have the ability to trade heavily back and forth, and doesn't get to take down the Samira, which they've put in so much hard work to keep down in this early game. Suddenly 3 kills onto Sanctu. You need to be worried for Burning Core now in a game that we thought was kind of just lights out for AXIZ.
I mean, Burning Core definitely still in the advantage, but AXIZ proving that they can fight back, and I think that is more important than anything else. We talked about how important these few remaining games are. They need to win all 4 of them to keep their chances at playoffs alive. And whilst they are in a deficit, showing that little bit of steel, showing that little bit of grit is exactly what you need to do. Dicey potentially goes for the Magnet Storm instead. What a turnaround, but it will not be enough for AXIZ. A Swamp is taken out. Sanctu's going to be the next target, but dives into the backline, stays alive for so long, so much damage, traded back, and it's a disaster. It looks so good for AXIZ, but collateral damage takes them all out.
That is a fight-saving, potentially game-saving cask from Gragas. We are going to see a replay of that, and I want you to see what Ray Farkey did to poor old Sanctu in that fight. It starts with Dicey turning around a catch onto him into whatever kind of engage he could, but Sanctu is punted incredibly far away, and as soon as he looks to re-engage, Fujimoto is on that AD carry. He doesn't get any chance to dive into that play, and as much as I hate seeing Ray Farkey on the Gragas so often, I want to see him on more of the individual carry threats. That was an absurd team fight from Burning Core's top laner.
I tell you what, when he throws casts like that, when he plays team fights like that, I really don't care. Flawless now going to be jumped onto by Toltu, and that's a lot of damage thrown onto the Graves as Swamp will be able to pick up the kill in just a moment, but it's already been traded back. The Hecarim's going to fall as well, and yeah, you take down Flawless, but you still end up dying. Sanctu is also being threatened here by Dice as over the wall goes the Gragas, and Dicey will be forced to run as well.
He has flash, he has a cask.
Oh, that's just the Bomber ultimate taking them out. Mega Man going to be the focus too. Burning Core, what are you even worrying about, man? Another clean fight.
I mean, Ray Farkey rolls in and says, Mac round, spinning up, drops the cask on for the kill onto Dicey, punts Mega Man back, and the last 2 fights have utterly been the Ray Farkey show. AXIZ going far too deep, and they're getting hugely disengaged.
Runs in, throws beverages at people, leaves, refuses to elaborate, and again, AXIZ trying to find something, trying to get an engage, but they underestimate how quickly Burning Core can respond.
come on, AXIZ, get some effing kills. As Gragas rolls up and, I mean, again, AXIZ overestimate themselves. Rayfarki is such a nuisance in these fights. And as soon as Sanctuary is out of the picture, realistically, who is dealing with Rayfarki? Answer is no one.
Yeah. You can't deal with a Gragas at that point in the game. Has opted for a bit more of a tank route, and with Sanctuary being the only real relevant damage threat on the AXIZ side, he's going to be absolutely fine. TP invested to secure this Herald, but 90 minutes into the game, this isn't the big objective that you need to be getting at this stage.
So, of course, there is Soul Point already there for Burning Core. I'm actually not sure if I'd referenced that a little bit before, but there are objective bounties up for the side of AXIZ. You have a Herald, there are some low HP towers down the side lane, and you have a Herald to push through them. If you get to the point where you can take large sweeping trades, potentially that's an angle. Ult from the Sejuani.
Dice. Just playing around. Didn't overstep there, but Tulsa were already taken very, very low. This Sejuani's meant to be an engaged one. You're not going to be engaging like that. Dice. Potentially caught out there, jumping over the wall, and Burning Core just not willing to overstep as it stands. Flawless may have been caught, though, as he walks forward to auto the tower, but doesn't get taken low. Dicey actually gets taken out. That was a damage calculation that you failed. That was a flash calculation that you failed, Megaman, and you're going to pay for it with your life. 2 kills picked up for Burning Core. They don't have a mid lane wave just yet, but Flawless diving over. Seems like he doesn't really care for his own life, but he knows that he is A-okay. Jumps back over.
He has a Gore Drinker, he's got a Black Cleaver, and he has not a care in the world. Flawless very quietly starting to rack up a lot of impactful fights on this Graves too. Overshadowed by the Gragas in a lot of ways. We've been talking about Rayfarki to such a large degree, but don't sleep on the rest of Burning Core. And sadly, it feels like Sejuani has been utterly put to sleep in this game because it's just done so little for the side of AXIZ. Sat there at 0, 2, and 3 and struggled to find any impact in this game.
Yeah, it's been a little bit bristle boring from Toltu, honestly. Hasn't been getting those huge ult engages. Herald summoned in the mid lane. We'll take a decent chunk out of this tower, may even take it down, but what happens to AXIZ afterwards? It looks like they're all going to be cleaned up, but it's Dicey going back in for the engage. The feathers are thrown out to buy a bit more time from Yuhi. No one's started yet on the side of Burning Cores. That's already a 1-forward trade, and Megaman has got the reset. He misses the ultimate, though, and that means that it's going to be disastrous for AXIZ. They're trying to clean it up, and they may just be able to. Flawless somehow still alive, dueling up with Swamp on the other side. And if you weren't a million gold in the deficit, maybe you win that fight, AXIZ. But as it stands, you've been aced.
They've been aced, and the Gore Drinker at the end keeps Flawless alive. But such a hard fight to watch as an AXIZ. Watch again, Dicey looking for the big engages, forces out the Xayah ult early. You think, okay, potentially this is the way to do it. But quick fingers on Yuhi gets him out of danger's path, and Megaman hits the first ult. This is great. Think, wow, potentially a way to turn this around, and I don't know who he's aiming for with this. I don't know, but that is a very poor ultimate from Megaman on the Vex. Would it have changed the fight completely? No, maybe not, but you look how little HP Flawless survives on at that point. It would have been something for AXIZ to walk away with instead of just a wiped fight.
It would have been good. You would have wanted to do it.
Yeah, I mean, there is no positive to missing that ult.
Associated with hitting your ult.
Because partly I'm sad, again, like, sometimes I'm slow to criticize players because I want to understand what they were doing. That one is just pointing your cursor in the wrong direction.
It's harsh, but it's fair.
And you have to be harsh on a team like AXIZ who have shown quite a few negative points in this split. Now, this was a team with low expectations. Again, I have to reiterate that. Sometimes it's good to put it back into perspective, but they were chasing playoffs, and you think that with Burning Core struggling, there was maybe an angle, and you'd hope to see a bit more drama in this split left for them, but feels like all the drama is the various ways that they can fail team fights in this game from a deficit, and oh my gosh, that is an Xmithia and a half.
That's just emblematic of how this game has really been going for Toltu and AXIZ as a whole. Megaman going to be caught out now. No Sejuani ultimate available. First kill of the fight is just way too easy, and now Burning Core are going to look to play it out. Sanctuary's diving into the back line, but the Inferno trigger doesn't do enough damage. It's going to be the rail taken out. Going to be the Samira thrown back into the team while Flawless is just taking names on the backside. No one can kill this Graves, and he can kill anyone that he wants. It's been a carry performance from Flawless, and Burning Core may just look to end the game here.
AXIZ throw themselves into Burning Core on cooldown, and they don't hit their marks. They are anti-snowballed against. They don't get ahead in the game. They throw themselves into the fire, and they are well and truly burned. Burning Core, they pick up the easy fights. They somehow find themselves in a lost fight kind of in the early to mid game. You think, oh no, AXIZ have got the combo online. But that was the one real shining bit of hope for AXIZ, a bright spark for them. And besides that, it has been a dark night sky. They really struggle to find anything to work with.
Oh, your jungle is dark.
Gosh.
Terrors. Megaman goes golden to buy a little bit of time, and Swamp and Sanctuary roaming over will dissuade Dicey from assassinating that mid lane pick. We're going to get a replay of that fight. Beautiful hook from Fujimoto.
We just saw Megaman get burst out, not quite to his death, but on live. But then in the replay, we see how quickly they were removed from this fight. So we highlighted the mid lane matchup in terms of one discrepancy that Burning Core could play around, and actually looking at the scoreboards coming out of this 6-0 and 10 Dice has dismantled his lane opponent. Not necessarily as a one-man act, so Megaman has been diving into the fights and been punished for it, but this mid laner of Dice has turned up to play today.
Yeah, it's been an immaculate performance from him. 6-0 and 10. 10 stacks on the Medjai's in inventory. Hopefully we can see 25 before this game is done. Swamp running very, very fast at Ray Farkey, but the Gragas is particularly tanky at this point.
Oh, this is really
Shadows kind of just goes wide as Dicey finds the engage onto the people that you actually need to get it onto, but Flawless is somehow still alive. Yuhi kiting back as well. The Ocean Soul just keeps him alive. It keeps the sustain going. It's a triple kill for Yuhi as the Penta is stolen away from him by a combination of his top laner and his mid, but I don't think he's going to mind too much, as it's going to be a victory road for Burning Core as they walk down mid to take the game.
And Milko, okay, that was me getting hit by the Sejuani ult because it was that far off target again. Toltu could not close down the target's Burning Core. It takes one more fight for them to close out the game, but they will secure themselves playoffs.
Off the back of brilliant performances from Flawless and Dice, carry from Yuhi as well. All the pieces coming together for Burning Core, and that secures themselves the win and playoffs.
It's a bit of a sad day for AXIZ, of course. With that, they're not mathematically eliminated from playoffs, but every loss for them cuts off a very large percentage of the very few remaining scenarios where they could get towards a post-split best of 5 and Burning Core walk away the victors. And it's a much-needed win for them to kind of turn around their own recent form, which has been middling at best.
Also helped secure themselves in that sort of fourth, fifth place spot, with CGA being taken down earlier as well. They've got a little bit more of that cushion. They've got a little bit more room to breathe as we start looking towards the final matches of the split. And looking towards playoffs, I feel like performances like this are kind of what we want to see out of them.
To an extent, I think that the way that they played out their team fights was good. I feel like they were handed to them in some regards. I feel like AXIZ were, not necessarily playing out the composition at the point in the game where they wanted to. They got one good fight, and then they mis-executed a lot of the fights after that point. But either way, you have to be able to pick up the balls which are thrown to you. And Burning Core, again, they have now a couple of games to iterate, to develop, to try and get themselves a better placing in playoffs if they can as well with their last couple of results. And they are safe, but not confident completely yet.
Yeah. Well, I think for maybe a bit of a breakdown of what they could potentially be iterating in the next few days and over the next few weeks, and for a bit of a recap on what went down that game, we're going to be jumping to the analyst desk after a short break. So don't go anywhere. We'll see you in a few minutes.
Welcome back to the analyst desk here on LJL, officially unofficial. And Burning Core take a much needed win, locking themselves in for playoffs. That weight now off their mind. And I want to highlight a specific, I would highlight a specific player for this game, but I want to say just altogether, BC together strong.
It felt like there was kind of there was very much a couple of roles which were outstanding for the side of Burning Core, but every player kind of just outvalued their opposing number, and we haven't seen this level of like team victory from Burning Core for quite a while, actually.
Yeah, they definitely have been in a bit of a slump, and I think that you can always caveat that AXIZ have probably got some of the weaker individual members in Burning Core have been a bit more win lane, win game, a bit like Burning Core Smash, but it was a phenomenal tactic this game. And yeah, to echo what Namira said, I think it was exceptional performances all across the map, really.
And what are we thinking about the Sedge top, by the way? Like, didn't feel like it is that much, but is that just Ray Farkey being amazing?
So there was very much, if we were talking about certain roles outperforming their opposing number, there was a top div this game, hugely so. The Sejuani had one okay trade in lane, which didn't even get a flash, and that was the extent of their impact on this game. There were no impactful Sejuani ults. There were no big frontline performances from Tol2. And as much as AXIZ have tried to delve into the bit of the weird and wonderful to try and find themselves results, this is obviously not one of their better moments on that, especially when you have someone like Ray Farkey, who, as much as I've criticized Burning Core for putting him on Gragas duty for so long, this was an absurd game from the Burning Core top laner.
I mean, some of the ultimates in team fights were absolutely ridiculous, and they really set up the damage carries of Burning Core to be those carries. And I think that something that the Sejuani top also affected for AXIZ is that we talked about in the pregame how AXIZ are very much a side lane focused team. It's about Toltu in the top lane. It's about Sanchu in the bot lane. The Sejuani is already removing one of your carry options off the board. And then after that level 1 trade in bot lane where Sanchu has to base with 100 HP, I feel like that removes your other carry lane as well. And at that point, it was a real uphill battle for AXIZ.
Absolutely. And that level 1 was absolutely filthy, and specifically my personal shout out to Fujimoto, because obviously found that level 1, basically invalidated Sanchu and Dicey in the early game, and then later we saw him just do Nautilus things, like casually hooking Mega Man, winning fights, free game.
With the level 1, that is exactly how the matchup goes. Like, that is something which everyone in that 2v2 knows shouldn't be just thrown, right? If you're going in for the crash down at that point, you effectively know that they have to just not have their hands on the keyboard, and you're hands checking them. And Fujimoto did end up just cancelling out the crash down. It's not like there was an aftershock or a glacial to be procced after that point, and you're sat there just thinking, well, you just did the one level 1 mechanic you shouldn't do, and it felt like that was kind of the running theme for most of this game, where AXIZ would just throw a quite basic question at Burning Core, and they would come back with a comprehensive answer.
And then Burning Core would punch him in the face.
Yep, that's the comprehensive answer.
Time and again.
In this essay, I will.
It's like the level 1 in the bot lane, Mega Man mystically missing the Shadow Surge in the team fight on mid lane. Swamp fearing. I can't remember who he went in with the Onslaught of Shadows, feared, and that caused Tol2's Glacial Prison. That caused the Glacial Prison to miss because he just went off in a different direction.
Yeah,
it was a comedy of errors for AXIZ.
I think that was more of a horror of errors for an AXIZ fan, but sure, we'll call it a comedy.
I feel like at this point you kind of just have to laugh about it, otherwise you might just cry.
Yeah,
that's the LJL special. We are the region of Sengoku Burning Core. We have learned how to do that in the very fires of League of Legends hell.
But do you know what? I feel like we're going quite hard on AXIZ and maybe not giving enough respect to what Burning Core did, because ultimately a team Throwing, sure, but there needs to be a team there to catch it, and this was fast-paced from Burning Core. It was aggressive. It was snowballing consistently, and yeah, Axis made a fair few mistakes. But honestly, for my money, I feel like Burning Core were forcing as many of those as they were just being
Yeah.
given for free.
And Burning Core got ahead of the curve after a couple of fights were kind of thrown to them, and they just rolled over the game quite smoothly. And again, to kind of put this in context as well, because as much of the criticism is there for Axis, and it is reasonable criticism, this is a team that did not have expectations. This was a team that was going to put together and were likely going to be bottom table team. They've put together a couple of good wins, actually. When Axis have been in triple round robin splits before, back in 2019, they'd only pieced together 3 wins in each of those splits. They're still better than their worst showings. And as much as they came off of one split of real high highs in the LJL, for a team that is rebuilding once again, it's sad, but again, we have to put in context that they're still actually holding it together somehow.
Yeah, wait till summer. I
Wait till
think
summer.
is what we care about for this team.
And we'll see. Obviously, AXIZ right now, I'm starting to think that their fate is not too much in their own hands anymore, considering the upswing of Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks Gaming. But if they can make playoffs, it'll be, of course, interesting to see how they do there. But speculating at this point perhaps isn't helpful.
I feel like for my money, playoffs are pretty certain at this point. I'm pretty happy with the current top 6 that we've got going to be the ones going forward. I think that we've still got a little bit of room to move, particularly with CJ and Hawks in that sort of 5th, 6th place. Who is going to be having to go up against the
second, third seed has a little bit of mobility too. Yeah. That's the big one in terms of the big drama matches.
Yeah, that's coming. The battle for the second Juggernaut spot is coming later today with Rascal Jester against Sengoku Gaming. So you've got that to look forward to.
That's going to be a really fun one.
We have got another game before that, but we're not going to get into that one too much. We are going to be saying goodbye to you now, Middlecott Nightmare. Thank you for coming and casting these first 2 games. I'll be throwing it to a break. When we return, I'll be joined by Temporal and Beautiful Crow to bring you coverage of the remaining 2 games of the day. Still more LJL to come. Don't miss it.